to the What You Don't Know podcast, brought to you by the Know Like Trust Report, which is a survey that only asks the most important questions. My name is Teresa Nichols, and I am here today with our guest. But before I do that, really quickly, anyone that watches the podcast can get 20% off their first Know Like Trust survey. And the promo code for that is all caps WYDK 2025. And so today, our guest is Michael Davis. And he is a very good friend of mine who I've always really wanted to have this conversation anyway, because he has such a cool job. He is a speaking coach and has done this for longer than I've known him, which is so cool. And so I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. So, Michael, first, if you could share with us something that will help us get to know you and like you and trust you.
Yeah, and I love the way you started the conversation, Teresa, with the what you don't know, because I just, as I like to say now, I just turned Social Security eligible on Saturday,
Huh, okay.
62. And
Wow.
one thing about me you should know is the older I get, the more I realize I don't know. And I'm okay with that because we live in a
Wow.
world with so much information
Yeah.
that part of it's being comfortable in your own skin and
That's
accepting. We
true.
were talking before the recording that I was at an event this weekend emceeing and speaking at, and I made a couple of amateur mistakes and I was called out on it, and rightfully so. And it's not just about knowing me, it's a person who's confident enough and has enough acceptance of who they are to say, yeah, I'm going to make mistakes. Don't get caught up in it. Learn from them.
Wow,
And
that's awesome.
that's part of knowledge, knowing yourself so other people can know you too, and just be an open book.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And the reason I started, and I've been coaching now for 14 years, I do what I do today because when I was 6 years old, I was humiliated by my first grade teacher in front of my class so badly that I said, I'll never stand in front of people again.
That's
And for
crazy. Like
21 years,
there are tears welling up in my eyes right now. That's crazy. Oh my gosh.
it was, that's just the way it was back in 1969 when I was a kid. So, but it was one of those moments that, and I talk about in my coaching, there are three kinds of stories we each need to know. Most storytelling coaches and presentation coaches focus on what's the story you're going to go out and tell. Well, there are two others we need to know. I call this the story power trio. Yes, you've got to be clear on the message. Second, what is the story your audience is telling themselves when you're speaking to them? And when I say audience, you could be a salesperson in a one-to-one situation. But if we don't know what they're telling themselves, that story, that narrative that's in their head may be blocking the story we're telling. But the most important story we tell, and we have to know, is the story we're telling ourselves. Which goes back to my first grade desk situation where I was embarrassed by being made to stand on my desk during nap time in front of my classmates. It was awful. So from that day forward, I said, I will never stand in front of people again. That became my new narrative.
Wow.
And until I became a financial planner 21 years later and was told, you have to go out and talk to prospective clients in workshops and seminars, that I had to face that old message. I had to start reframing that message. So you talk about know, like, and trust. Yes, I think it's important that people like us, and that's one way they will do business with us. My twist on the word like, though, is they want to know that we are like them.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Meaning, yeah, we're like them in a sense that
Similar.
means,
Yeah.
we understand them.
Okay. I love that.
We can relate to their problems because,
Absolutely.
because
Relating.
we're
Yeah.
at a higher level of distrust now than we've ever been, at least in my lifetime.
Wow.
And the way we start to build that trust back up is to, first of all, not appear like we have all the answers, that we're fallible, we make mistakes, but we can learn from them, that we understand their problem, and that we have a solution to that problem.
That's
The
cool.
trust will come from that.
Yeah. What word you didn't say that came to me was transparent.
Yes,
And that all all of that is very transparent. So that's really cool. Yeah.
it is. And one of the challenges I see as a coach is that some people confuse transparency with using the stage for therapy.
Ooch. Ooh. Okay.
Meaning, especially when they're talking about serious subjects, they go up there and they do a verbal dump on the audience, and they're not ready to share it because they haven't dealt with the emotions of it.
Wow. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah,
What not to do. I like that a lot.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
there's a fine line here, Teresa, because it's okay. You mentioned before tearing up just hearing my story. If you were
Yeah.
telling a story and you started to tearing up, there's nothing wrong with that. That tells the audience, or even again, substitute the word audience for prospective client, doesn't matter. That tells them that you're human and that you've got emotion and you're not just reading off a story that you've memorized, because there's no transparency and authenticity there. But if you get to the point where you're sobbing uncontrollably and you can't get through it, you are not ready to share that because you haven't dealt with the emotional turmoil. One of my friends, Ray, says it best. Audiences want to hear about your scars, not your open wounds.
Ooh, okay.
I wish I was smart enough to think that one up. He's brilliant.
That
But
is
that's
really
it.
nice.
The scar means you've gone through it, you've learned from it, and you can manage
Right.
the emotion. The open wound is I'm not dealing with it effectively. It's
Exactly. Yeah. That's really nice. I feel like that's very actionable too. That
mhm,
if I was around someone who was sharing something and it felt more like an open wound, I could
mhm.
say, I think you need to deal with this. Rather than telling people about it, I feel like you haven't dealt with it yet and it should be dealt with. So, yeah, so that's really good.
That's a terrific insight on your part. I hadn't quite thought of it that way, but now as a coach, I will say that to folks. But if I'm dealing
Yeah.
with a friend who's like, I'm going to go tell this story, it's like, no, you're not. You're not ready to.
Yeah. Yeah, be
And
careful
that's
with
the most
it.
loving, supportive thing you can do for someone is to say,
Oh,
no,
absolutely.
don't do that. You're not ready.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and feedback itself is it's really interesting. I mean, even the Bible it talks about having trusted advisors. And in our lives, there was an author. I really should have his book with me all the time when I'm doing interviews because he's a Christian author. I think he's a pastor, and he had said that it is rare in our lives when we find somebody who's willing to give us honest feedback
Mhm.
and who you trust enough, and it's like a really good relationship that they can really give you honest feedback. And that was just a crazy thing for me to read. I was just like, so basically, we're all walking around needing feedback and we're not getting it because we don't have these trusted relationships. So, yeah, so it was really interesting thought.
It's an interesting point you bring up too, Teresa, because I meet a lot of people who I'll say, okay, what kind of feedback do you want? Do you want varnished or unvarnished?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to be a jerk about it, but do you want raw feedback? And sometimes they'll, everybody always says the same thing. Oh, I want the unvarnished. But when you
Yeah,
give it, you can tell they really don't.
yeah.
And
That's
it's,
interesting too. I had another interview, and what she said was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how honest do you want me to be?
mm,
Which is different than varnished. I mean, I feel like those, you
true.
could even ask both of those questions, like, okay, how honest and how varnished?
Yeah, you could.
So, yeah, so that's really interesting that it has that many levels to it, that, we could kind of break it up that way. So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I've
really
spoken with two people in the last 2 weeks, and I could tell they wanted validation. They didn't want
cool.
improvement.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how do you deal with something like that? Do you kind of get through that and help them kind of see the other side of that?
In this case, I'm actually working with these two people
Mm.
on behalf of someone else. So I can't be, I go back to the person who brought me in and said, I don't think they're coachable. And then he
Oh,
has to decide.
yeah.
If it's me, I tell them right up front, I don't think my kind of coaching is for you. And I will
Okay.
give, and if they've paid me, I'll give them their money back.
Wow.
Typically what I do is I'll have somebody will invest in me and we'll have a 30-minute consulting call just to see where we
Sure.
stand. Doesn't happen often, but every so often it will happen that I say, this isn't for you.
Wow. And have you ever had somebody say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'm willing to get through that? Or did they basically say, okay, thanks, we'll move our separate ways?
Well, one of them said no. I said, yeah, maybe I'm not. And then
Okay.
and the other one said, okay, I hear what you're saying, and maybe I need to rethink it. And we
Yeah.
actually did do some good work together. It
Good.
was hard work, but I'm willing to work with anybody who is coachable and is open minded enough to try something new.
Wow. Coachable. My gosh.
Yeah,
That's
and I
crazy.
don't say that like, look at me, I'm special. No, it's not serving them for them to
Yeah.
give me their credit card and then find out they're not getting
They're
anything
not
out of it. That's
coachable.
not ethical.
Wow. So what about, I mean, it sounds like you're saying that you have said, like, hey, I don't think that, that I'm a good fit for you. Have you ever said you're not coachable?
No, I won't go that way because
Okay.
sometimes it's not that they're not coachable. They're not coachable with my style,
Okay.
right? We're all different. Some
Yeah.
people need a hard driving, I'm going to go stereotypical here, hard driving New York type, right? Just hit you between the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
That's not me. Some people need the soft pat on the back, and that's not me completely either. I'm in the
Okay.
middle.
Okay.
I'm supportive, but I'm going to tell you what you need to hear if you want to improve. I mean, that's what any good coach should do.
Yeah. Well, so Michael, you do not know this. I don't think. I don't think I
Okay.
ever told you this, but
Okay.
do you know how often I think about you?
Tell me more, Teresa.
Isn't that a funny thing? No, it
No, I don't.
seriously, and the people that I have met throughout my life, and I still have this rogue hair. I don't know why. It's like it's doing its own thing. I don't know why. But I will be sitting watching television, and the really the main things are when somebody like the chief of police, the fire chief, has to get in front of a camera and
Hmm.
talk.
Hmm.
And I'm like, man, these are the people that need Michael Davis because they don't know how. Nobody's ever told them how to speak. And it's very frustrating for me because, I went to college and I've always really wanted to have that, the dream job and all of that stuff. And then I see these people who get this opportunity. They're like, "Hey, you're here on the news and we want to talk to you. We want to ask you these questions." And the first thing they say is, well, uh, and I'm just like, man, these people, I feel bad for them because nobody said to them, hey, look, you're going up to this level where you need to know how to speak to people. You need to know how to speak in front of a camera.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have you work with Michael Davis before you get into this situation where you have to speak on camera. So
It's a huge problem.
yeah. So I mean, I'm like, sometimes I think about is Michael Davis getting in front of these people? Is he able to intercept these situations? And so I was curious about that. I'm curious about if you've had these opportunities to help these people, before they've gotten into these situations. So it's
I've
kind of
worked
weird.
I've worked with too many people who get in front of a camera other than, well, I've worked with a lot of TEDx speakers, which is
Oh,
a
okay.
potential.
Yeah.
The people in those situations, and I watch the LA fires and a lot of the interviews with the
Wow.
mayor and the fire chief, which was a epic disaster between those two.
Yeah.
You have to be able to have practiced it so much that it's second nature that you can handle those tough questions because those dire circumstances they were facing. And one of the challenges is you haven't done that. You do look, the filler word thing kind of gets overemphasized, but it does give insight into this person's preparation.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to know your talking points and you've got to hit them fast. It's become worse in the last 10 years because we are so addicted to our technology. And I know this sounds like an old guy. Well, I am Social Security eligible, so I guess. But young people today don't have any attention span. That's not necessarily true, but they do demand quickly. Uh, their attention spans demand that we quickly give them something of value, or they're checking out. That's the challenge. It's not that we have an attention span problem. We have a getting attention and keeping attention problem. That's on the communicator. That's not on the listener.
Okay. No,
So,
I get you, and it's interesting. I've talked to videographers
mhm,
who say that they've changed their style to keep those young people interested.
mhm.
So that's really interesting that you said that. And and I also heard you say you go to conferences, which doesn't surprise me at all. But the one I'm not sure, are you familiar with the ICMA, with the International City Managers Association?
No, I've not heard of that one. Doesn't
Look
surprise me
into
there is
that.
none.
Yes, look into that and see about doing breakout sessions there
Okay.
because that would get you to these people who need your services.
Okay.
Because these city managers, they need to speak too, but a lot of them, well, interestingly, uh, some of them have been trained. Some of them go to college to be city managers.
Right.
Some of them get hired because they were the chief of police.
Okay.
So some of them don't have those communication skills.
No, they
So,
don't.
yeah. And the city managers would then also encourage their chiefs to work with you.
Well, I appreciate that insight, and I
Yeah.
will definitely check that out. The problem isn't that they can't communicate well, they're not media trained.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Hmm.
You've got just a few seconds for those sound bites,
Yeah.
and you've got to know what create those sound bites. And I'll tell you what, I use AI a lot to help me formulate my thoughts. And one of the
Okay.
tools we use it for is to give me a 10-second, 5-second, 15-second sound bite that will summarize my point.
Yeah.
Now, most of them aren't good, but if you ask it for 15, 20, or 25, it'll give you some ideas. AI doesn't replace us. It just
Nice.
helps us avoid a lot of the mentally draining work so we can be creative.
Absolutely. Yes, I have used it for interesting things. I was working with a client who's in the art world, and I
Okay.
am not in the art world at all. So I needed a letter to an art director for a facility. And, instead of trying to craft it myself, I had AI do that for me. And it was eloquent. I mean, I was really impressed how
Yeah.
beautiful it was. Yeah, so and I'm sure mine would not have been as beautiful as what, as what AI created. So yeah, so I get you on that. It is really cool that we can use it. It's awesome.
Yeah. One of my friends keeps reminding me of this. AI is not going to replace people. It's going to replace people who don't use AI, though.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. I mean, it has so much potential. And as a speech coach, it helps me tremendously because
That's
there are
cool.
certain beats that I look for in a story, for example, or parts of a
Okay.
speech. And I can run it through and say, now, what beats are missing? So I don't have to take my time up looking for that. That's a surface issue. Now, then I can go, okay, that'll help me find what parts need to be included. And then where can we dive deep into the emotional part of it? Because AI can't do that. A beat is just a part of a story. For example, there's this concept that's been around for years. Joseph Campbell, American, well, they call him an American philosopher. He studied the history of mythology, and he came up with what's called the hero's journey. You may have heard of that. Hero's journey has what they call beats, meaning that there is a character who in the beginning is living their ordinary life, and then something comes in and changes that life. It's an inciting incident and pushes them out of their comfort zone of their ordinary life. And it sets them on this journey. And throughout the journey, there are these different beats where it's called you go into the belly of the whale, which is you're in danger. Your whole way of life is challenged. And it might be physical, it might be emotional.
Okay.
And you
That's
go
cool.
through these different stages until you get to the end. You overcome the problem, you succeed, and you have a new a vision of life. You've got a whole new perspective, which you go back and share with people in your life.
Okay. That's cool. So you said you've been coaching for 14 years.
Yes.
So in those 14 years, um, what things have you adjusted and based on the feedback that you've gotten from your clients?
I love this question. I think about it. I started off part time because we first met, I was still in the financial
Oh, really?
industry.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a
That's
financial advisor for
okay.
29 years. But around 2009, 10, I thought, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I had this calling in me. I just didn't know what to do with it. I knew it had to do with speaking. So I started part time. And I mean, part
Okay.
time with a small P and a small T. It was like an hour or two on weekends. And it was just to help people with their speeches, shorter speeches typically. And then I just started adding time to it. And then that progressed to where 2018, I made a decision either go for what you're supposed to be doing or stay in the financial world and, yeah, make a nice income, but not feel fulfilled. So
Wow.
I
That's cool.
burned the bridges. I burned the boats. I burned everything. I let all my
Yeah.
licenses go and said, I don't
Nice.
want an escape route. So in 2018, I knew I had to do a deep dive into speaking and storytelling.
Okay.
Accidentally, I was prepared for the pandemic by my mentor. It's a gentleman named Darren LaCroix. I was part of his online university group, and we coach people every week online. Well, I'm going to say the word forced because when a mentor tells you to do something, you just do it and don't question it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do this, but he said I have to. So once
Nice.
a week, he had me on using this tool called Zoom. I don't know what that is. This was in 2017. Right? So,
Wow. Okay.
so he keeps telling me to do it, and I'm making every possible mistake, and I keep trying to get out of it. And he says, "No, you're just going to keep doing it." Well, how could I have known that he was preparing me for a pandemic 3 years later? And when I was going to networking events, like the networking event that you and I met through, and people in 2019 were telling me, I could never meet somebody online. That's just, I got to be in person. And I said, look, I don't know when it's coming, but it is coming to where you're going to be doing a lot of work online, not knowing what was about to happen with COVID.
Yeah. Very cool.
A year later, everybody's comfortable online. It's like, that's what I've been trying to
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah.
But
So true.
so,
I mean, it changed things like crazy, changed things. Yeah.
yeah, but that was feedback. You asked about feedback. Well, in
Absolutely.
2019, I'm getting this feedback that I could never meet people online. Well, those voices are in my head a year later when the lockdown happens. And what does that tell me? They're not ready. So I shifted my whole business focus for a year to helping people just know where to look into the camera. It's not over there. It's not up there. It's here. So you got to start there. And then
Wow.
don't look at yourself and just teaching them all the basics. So that's listening to the market saying, I don't want to do that. I could never do it too. Now I have to do it.
Wow. That's amazing. I love that.
The
Yeah, I oddly, as much as I'm a people person,
Mhm.
I like technology too. So the shift was fine for me. It wasn't weird for me, and it almost played itself out like so perfectly because so many people had to embrace online.
Yeah,
And so here I was already online, and I went to all the networking and, all the people facing and stuff, but I was already online. So I
right.
was cool with it. But it was wild how many people it pulled into it so quickly to
Well,
being online. Yeah.
it was also interesting in the speaking world. I saw some well known, successful professional speakers leave the business
Huh.
because of the lockdown. Here's the
Oh,
problem they had:
okay.
they confused the idea that people were hiring them for them when really the reason they were being hired was for their message and the problem they solved. Now, I think I know how you'll answer this, Teresa, but when you're giving a presentation that's helping people solve a problem, do they really care if you're standing in front of them, if you're online, or they're watching a course or reading a book? No, they just want the problem solved.
Yeah.
They don't get through their challenge, solve the problem, and say, wow, that was so much better because you gave me the solution in person. They don't even think
Yeah.
about that.
Oh,
That's where
sure.
our egos get involved.
Wow, they do. They do so much. Oh my
It's like,
gosh.
look, if you get benefit from hearing my interview with Teresa Nichols, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
If you get it from reading one of my books or watching one of my courses, or it doesn't matter to me how you get the info, just as long as you get it so it helps you solve the problem.
Hmm. Love that. I think that I do that myself, that I get so caught up in the presentation itself that I don't think about what I'm really there to do. And the interestingly, even though you're talking to a group of people, if you're in front of people, ultimately you are touching each person individually.
Mm-hmm.
So it, I need to feel that more. And I'll give you an example. So I'm a certified personal trainer,
Mm-hmm.
and last year I did this really low impact workout breakout session for a retreat, and they asked me to come back this year. And let me tell you, I I really didn't get great feedback afterward. I thought they all hated it. I didn't know they all liked it
Yeah.
enough to have me come back, but they reached back out to me and said, "We want you to come back this year." And I was really honored that they said that. And so now I'm getting ready for this again, and I'm thinking about it really differently. I'm thinking about it like trying to relate to every person in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and it not being about me, but about solving that problem, about helping them incorporate low impact exercise into their lives every day that's going to be easy and doable versus just, hey, look at me, look what I'm doing.
Well, a
So
couple ideas for you there. This is a
yeah.
perfect, I'd say, typical example of how a lot of folks struggle with that presentation
Mm.
is number one, what do they really want from you? Do they want low impact exercise? Is that really what they want?
I don't know. I don't
What,
know.
what's the real problem they're trying to solve?
Is it just not being sedentary?
Okay, so what is the result of being sedentary?
Just
What's
health, just
health?
general health.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's dig a little deeper than that. This is what I
Okay.
do in coaching all the time, Tracy.
Okay.
What's the real problem of them being sedentary and their health not being as good as it could be?
Hmm.
What's the underlying problem?
Sure. Well, I mean, underlying problems are um, over being overweight
Okay.
or injury or, chronic disease that's out there.
Okay, so if I'm overweight, if I'm injured, I have chronic disease, what's that doing to me?
Well, shortening your lifespan
Shorten
and
my life.
making you less able to do other things that you'd like to do.
Like what?
Just uh, going out with friends or grandkids or kids, or being able to keep up with people and enjoy life. And
There you go.
yeah.
This is what good coaching does is it digs deep underneath. People don't want low impact exercise. They don't want a story coach. What they want, in your case, I want to get on the floor with my grandkids and run around and play. I
Hmm.
can't do that right now.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got the solution. Teresa, they don't care what it is. As one of my coaches taught me, if you've got the bridge to get them from one side of the problem to the over here the solution, they don't care what the bridge is. They don't care if it's low impact, if it's aerobics, if it's walking. They don't care. They just know you can solve the problem.
Okay.
As consultants, trainers, coaches, speakers, sales professionals, we get too caught up in the solution. I'm going
Hmm.
to show you my 14-step program to help you become a better communicator. First
Right.
of all, I don't want 14 steps, so I'm out. But my 3-step story program, all right, that's part of after I've gotten them to understand that I'm going to solve the problem that they have of not connecting with people at a deep level, not having confidence, not making enough sales. Once they understand I can help them solve that, then they want to know what the solution is. But we lead with the solution far too often rather than here's the relief of your problem.
Nice. I love that. That's
Now, I
cool.
know we
Thank
went
you.
way off tangent with your original question, which was the feedback. Well, another piece of feedback that I started paying attention to last year is that there are a lot of people out there teaching or coaching storytelling and speaking.
Okay.
And I looked at that and I thought, I've got to do something different to stand out from the marketplace because, again, nobody wants a storytelling coach. They want more sales, they want more impact. But I did create a different perspective, which is the 3 stories we talked about at the beginning of our conversation. I call it the story power trio.
Okay.
It doesn't matter how good your story is if people's own their own internal narrative is blocking them from hearing your story. And even more importantly, what's the story you're telling yourself, like me as a 6-year-old saying, I'm never standing in front of people again because that is painful. If we're not aware of those, I don't care how good of a storyteller we are not going to have the impact we could. So that's watching the marketplace and saying, I'm seeing all these people out here saying the same thing. How can I say it differently and go even deeper to help solve the problem?
That's really cool. Well, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, they can contact me, Michael at speakingcpr.com. That's the easiest way.
Okay.
You can go to my website, speakingcpr.com.
Nice.
And if you contact me, I'll be happy to jump on a call with you, talk about whatever communication challenges you're having. I've also got some complimentary resources I can give you too.
Nice. Wow. So you have incorporated Zoom, huh?
Oh yeah, I've been using Zoom for 8 years now,
That's great.
and it still
I love
drives
that.
me crazy.
Weirdly, back then there was this one called Join.me. Do you
Okay.
remember?
I remember the name. I don't know if I ever used it.
And yeah, it was a weird thing. It was like, man, they were right on the bubble, and Zoom just kind of took it. Like Zoom was the popular kid, right? So I don't know if Join.me is still around
Yeah.
or if they rode that wave for a little while, but I'm like, oh, what happened to Join.me? I felt sad.
Well, it's like, what was that thing that was popular before Facebook?
Oh, yeah. MySpace.
MySpace. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was it. Yeah,
Yep.
sometimes it's marketing and timing. I thought
Yeah.
Zoom did an incredible job during the early days of the pandemic. I mean, their usership went up hundreds of a percent overnight, and they were able to handle it for the most part.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
been
Yeah,
it's been an
maybe
amazing
that's
story.
something to do with that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I'd like to do also is give you a KLT survey. So I can send that to you, a branded KLT
Okay. I
survey.
appreciate that.
And, I remember as we were talking before the interview, you said that you like your feedback very, very specific. So I'm going to make a couple little tweaks to your survey to
Okay.
see if you like it.
Yeah.
And that you can use that absolutely free as a thank you gift for being on the podcast
Oh,
today.
thank you. Well, we talked about this, Teresa, and as a coach, when I'm working with people on their stories and speeches, many times audience members, well-meaning folks, will come up and say, "Oh, Teresa, that was so good. I love that so much."
Yeah.
And our ego is like, "Yeah, that's no,
Thank
I
you. Thank
killed
you.
it. I killed it."
Yeah.
That's not useful feedback. What I do is say, "Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. What specifically resonated with you?"
I love that.
You're going to get one of 2 types of answers. They're going to tell you specifically what resonated, which is basically crowdsourcing your feedback to say, "Oh, I didn't need." Sometimes you'll hear an answer you've heard over and over again, and you know that part of your story or your speech really resonates and sticks.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
Sometimes
cool.
you're going to get something that you never considered, and that needs to get more prominence the next time you tell it.
Hmm.
So you're getting free audience research on the spot, but you got to get it while they're there.
Yeah. That's so great. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because as soon as
Really.
they leave, they're thinking about the kids, the dogs, getting to the dog to the vet, and everything else.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
The other kind of feedback you'll get is, "Well, I can't really think of anything. They were just being nice."
Yeah. Or they really just wanted to talk to you, right?
Yeah, true. That's right. You bring up a
Yeah.
good point. Yeah, just want
Wanted
to
to
talk
get
to
really
that
close.
speaker person.
Yeah.
But
All
always
right.
look
Well,
for the feedback.
yeah, that's so great. And specific is a really, really good thing. So,
Yes.
so yeah, I'm gonna tweak your survey a little bit for you.
I
So,
appreciate that.
and thank you so much for being on the podcast today, and it's been great to get reconnected with you.
Yes.
And I hope that, since we are post COVID, that I will be running into you more. So
Yes, I hope
it's
so.
really weird that we live, as close as we do, and I had to get you on a podcast.
That seems how it
So,
is these days.
yeah. So, because I really appreciate you, and I did not know you were a financial advisor. That's such a cool thing, and that you said this isn't what I want to do, and you did your own thing.
Yeah.
So it's so cool. That's probably why I really appreciate you too, because I don't know, I kind of gravitate to those people that say, uh, I want to do my own thing. I want to
Yeah.
get out and make a difference, and kind of jump out of this comfort zone. So that's really cool. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Well, I will see you very soon, and
Yes, you
have
will.
an awesome week. And thank you so much.
All right.